a Sri Lankan monk called Prakhyat Kirti, who came in the 7th century, built a shrine and also made some repairs to the Mahabodhi temple. However, it appears that after this no major repairs or enhancements were made to the Mahabodhi temple for nearly 4 centuries. It was only in 1010 of the Common Era that some minor repairs are reported to have been undertaken by Mahipal I of Pala dynasty around 8th to 12th century of the Common Era. The Mahabodhi temple reached its zenith under Pala and Sena rule, when it clearly stood as a thriving hub of royal patronage, artistic production and Pan-Asian Buddhist activity. Thereafter, the Burmese carried out major restoration and renovation at least twice during the 12th and 13th centuries, significantly altering the original design. Tarnath refers to some damage coming to the Mahabodhi temple towards the end of the 11th century as a consequence of fire that was put out by the monks. The last Indian Buddhist king to carry out repairs was King Ashok Bal of Sabat located in the Shivalik hills of the Punjab. He, along with a local chieftain called Purushottam Simha, carried out several repairs in the year 1157 of the Common Era under the supervision of a Buddhist monk called Dharmarakshit. After the Trushka attacks began in the region towards the closing years of the 12th century, patronage and travel to the Mahabodhi temple appears to have nearly ended, except the occasional daredevil, and one comes across only 2 examples of some repair work done in the last quarter of the 13th century. One was in the year 1286, when 4 persons, including a Tibetan monk called Grubthob Rigyan, another person working on behalf of the king of Lanka, and 2 others are said to have repaired one side each of the Mahabodhi temple. The second example is recorded in the Burmese inscription of 1833, according to which some repair work was done at the temple between the years 1295 and 1298 of the Common Era. Thereafter, the Mahabodhi temple became derelict. Additions and renovations resumed only in the 18th century, culminating in its near reconstruction and repossession by the British in the 1880s. Now, it may be said that though the present structure was largely created through several massive restorations during the second half of the 19th century, it incorporates large parts of earlier work dating from as early as a period as the 2nd century BCE. The site of the Mahabodhi temple appears to have been multivalent since before the Buddha took his seat under the Mahabodhi tree. Though at the beginning of the 7th century and then in the late 8th century of the Common Era, Shaivites had a predominant presence at the shrine, and at other times it was under the control of the Sri Lankan Buddhists. The shrine has never ceased to be a multivalent site. Other than the Buddhist sculptures that have been found here in large quantities, Shaivite and Vaishnavite scriptures dated from the 9th to the 11th century of the Common Era have also been found all over the site. Buddhist scholar Beni Madhav Barua has pointed out that at least since the Kushana period, pious Brahmanical Hindus had been visiting Dharmprastha, that is Bodh Gaya, to have a sacred touch of the Buddha image, pay respectful homage to it, as well as the Mahabodhi tree for the purpose of releasing the departed spirits of their ancestors. He further points out that a time had come when the Buddhist legends itself, the Shaiva Brahmanical deity Maheshwar, was entrusted with the benign work of acting as the guardian angel to the Buddha. The testimony of Xuanzang proves that as early as the 7th century of the Common Era, the Buddhists themselves freely recognized the temple as a magnificent erection of the devotional piety of a Shaivite Brahman who undertook the costly work under inspiration from no other deity than Maheshwar himself. If we can rely upon the testimony of the great Chinese pilgrim, the lifelike image of the Buddha, which he found enshrined in the main sanctuary of the temple at the time of his visit, was the wonderful handiwork of a skilled Brahman artist employed by the builder of the temple. If the two Brahman brothers had afterwards become votaries of the Buddha, for that too the credit is due at the first instance to Shiv Maheshwar, the Brahmanical deity, ungrudgingly rendering distinct service to the Buddha. The multivalent nature of the Mahabodhi temple is also indicated by a 10th century inscription from Bodh Gaya of one Keshav, son of Ujjwal, the stone cutter. According to this inscription, the erudite Shaivite Brahman scholars and their successors were living at Bodh Gaya side by side with the Buddhists of the place without any feeling of enmity or discord. The record goes on so far as to indicate that a devout Hindu was freely allowed to set up a stone figure of Shiva Brahma, Mahadeva Chaturmukh, within the temple of Buddha Dharmesh for the benefit of the Shaivite Brahman scholars of the locality. Referring to the overall multivalent nature of the place of worship, the Dharmswamin also mentions that the procedure of the image worship in Buddhist temples of Bihar and Nepal was at this time very similar to that in Hindu shrines. It is therefore no surprise that both the Brahmanical Hindus and Buddhists have traditionally performed worship side by side at Bodh Gaya. The Gaya Mahatmya, which is the concluding portion of the Vayu Puran and was composed around the time when the international pilgrimage to the Mahabodhi temple almost came to a halt, further cemented the multivalent character of the Mahabodhi temple when the Brahmans of Gaya began to officiate as priests at the worship of the Buddha Dharmeshwar at Bodh Gaya, which formed part of the Gaya Kshetra. It is also noteworthy that when during the medieval period, after the Mahabodhi temple had been abandoned after the Trushka invasions, a Shaivite Mahant started staying here and looking after the temple. This is not very unusual in the case of India. Hindus, Buddhists and Jainas were often sharing holy space, and when one community due to some reason abandoned their place of worship, another community started staying here and looking after this temple. So it was basically that kind of tradition that the Shaivite Mahants continued to look after this temple into the modern times. When after independence, the Mahabodhi Temple Act was passed by the Bihar government, and after this temple is being looked after by a committee consisting of 4 Hindus and 4 Buddhists. Thank you so much.